Hi, thank you for checking out this video. So last week I discussed numerical ontology, and this week I'm also going to discuss ontology, but this time I'm going to provide a critique of a very popular view. It's called physicalism. So physicalism, simply put, is the thesis that everything is physical, which is a shockingly bold claim. I don't think people realize how big of a claim that is. On face value, like, let's look at the word physical. So the word physical, when you really look at all the different definitions, and you really have to dig deep to kind of like get a feel, because there are just so many different ways that word is used. For the most part, it means not mental. When you look at what is the opposite, if you Google search what is the opposite of physical, you get mental or abstract. Sometimes you get like spiritual, metaphysical, anything like that. Intangible, immaterial. But basically non-mental, because that's generally the way we see it, is mind versus matter, and that's our dualistic split. For some reason, we've just decided that that's a real, like, division of the cosmos, something I don't necessarily believe. I think it's all unified on some level. But the way we go about it is like one must explain the other. I don't take that position, but that's the way we're approaching it. So I'm just going to explain the physicalist perspective here and explain why I disagree with it, for reasons other than the fact that I think that the distinction is bogus. Like, I think the distinction is made by us. I don't think reality is actually divided. I think reality is mental and physical. It's both, and it's neither. That is, it's not limited to mentality and physicality. It's kind of unspeakable, you could say. Reality just is what it is. And I don't think these categories apply. They're just human categories they're labels that we put on things. And the universe just can't be labeled, in my opinion. Can't be described by any one word. But yeah, so everything is physical is the thesis. So, which is equivalent to saying everything is not mental, which should strike you as odd because the mind is obviously mental. So there's a instant contradiction in that position. So typically what you find is that the way it's formulated is in terms of causality, usually, which I find weird, because even if something causes something else, so basically the idea is that the physical causes the mental. That's what they say. Like, that's the thing. First, hasn't been proven. We don't have any theory for the emergence of consciousness. You can't say if you arrange matter in this particular configuration and take these steps that consciousness will emerge. Can't do that. Like, that's never been shown. As yeah, we it's just a huge mystery, the hard problem of consciousness. But even if it were caused, even if the mental were caused by the physical, causation is not equivalence. If I cause a car accident, that car accident isn't me. It's not like just because I cause something doesn't make it human for some reason. Like, I don't impart my qualities to something just because I cause it. So to say that because something physical causes something non-physical, that therefore that non-physical thing is now physical, I don't see how that follows at all. Furthermore, like, something could be caused and be relatively independent. For instance, two people could create a human being, they could give birth to a child, and that child is relatively independent of their parents, and they're not the same as their parents. So they're not equivalent, and there's many more examples. Like, you could like create like a piece of art, and that art is not you. So yeah, causality is an interesting one. Beyond that, there's like the descriptive, view of physicalism. The idea that physicalism is saying that reality is described by physical theory, which is ambiguous because are we referring to physics? Some people say yes, some people say no. Some people try to say it's science, like all of science is describing physical things or is physical theory, which is problematic because science is not unified. Like it's many different branches with many different theories about things, and these theories contradict. Like they're not completely cohesive or talking about the same things, using the same language. Um, it's not a unified thing, so our knowledge is still kind of fractured. Um, science is primarily about what's useful, not about some airtight theory. But when it comes to physics, that's usually where it ends up, the conversation. So first, I would argue that like physics doesn't describe all of science. It hasn't explained how emergence works. Some people say that's not a problem. I think it kind of is, especially with biology, like abiogenesis, how biological life can emerge from non-biological material is a big problem. And until we solve that, like that's not, you know, that's a problem for our theories. Like we just don't understand that. Um, but physics itself is not even unified within itself. Like you may have heard of like theories of everything, and there have been scientists who have worked towards a theory of everything. Stephen Hawking is the first name that comes to mind. And even Hawking, near the end of his life, had sort of resigned himself to the view that it's probably not possible to have a theory of everything. Um, and there are well known scientists, I believe Roger Penrose is one of them, who take very seriously the work of Kurt Gödel, um, who was a mathematician or a logician, and he pretty much showed that even mathematics has truths that are unprovable. So like the whole idea that you could have a completely consistent theory of anything is really undermined by the fact that not even mathematics is internally consistent. Um, that's a consequence of Gödel's incompleteness theorems. Um, there are also other critiques of rationality, like, you know, also there's something in psychology called map-territory relation. The map is not the territory. So you could say, well, this describes reality. It's not reality, though. There's two different things. It's just a model of reality. So, you know, Niels Bohr said that physics does not concern or does not tell us what nature is. It tells us what we say about nature. I really hacked that up, but that's the gist. He wasn't the only scientist to say that. Um, Science is really how we talk about reality and how we think about reality. It's not reality. Reality is what we study. There's always a mystery there. But yeah, so going back to physics, so if physics is supposed to be, so explanatory, and I'm not dissing physics, like physics is awesome. I love physics. But physics, the standard model of particle physics only accounts for 5% of the universe at max. 5% of the known universe. 68% is believed to be dark energy, which is unknown. They know nothing about dark energy at all. They don't even know if dark energy is a real thing. And I believe it's 26% is dark matter. Dark matter is the same thing. They don't know. Both dark matter and dark energy are hypothesized due to um, the discrepancy between observation and theory. So basically, their theories only really work for about 5% of the universe. That's what they're telling us. That's physics right there. Not only that, but the standard model of particle physics does not include gravity. And so, because of that, general relativity and quantum mechanics are not really compatible. They're two different theories that work at different scales of the universe. Um, and both of them have issues. Um, yeah, and I mean, the whole idea of materialism, the idea that there's a single material that everything is composed of, is just wrong. Like, the standard model of particle physics describes 30 different particles that are actually perturbations of quantum fields. So technically it's 30 different quantum fields, the fields themselves being invisible and intangible mathematical abstractions pretty much, that manifest as particles when you measure them. Something that we still have not explained. It's called the measurement problem. There's nothing in the math which predicts the collapse of the wave function. The Schrodinger's equation does not predict the collapse of the wave function because that is determined by measurement, and measurement is still very poorly defined. That's a weird rabbit hole to go down and try to figure out what is meant by measurement in quantum mechanics. It's vaguely defined as some interaction with the environment. Go figure. So yeah, there are issues in physics. 30 different quantum fields / particles that do different things. They behave differently. Like, they're not equivalent. An electron is not a photon, is not a Higgs particle. These are very different things. In fact, in the standard model, there's there's matter and there's antimatter. So there's particles and antiparticles, and when they collide, they annihilate each other. That's just weird. It's very strange. So it's far from some single substance. Like, you've got at least 30 different substances. And that's only for 5% of the known universe. So yeah, the idea that matter is fundamental. Heisenberg rejected that view. He rejected materialism straight out. Max Planck, the founder of quantum physics, he straight up said there's no such thing as matter. And he actually believed in a universal mind, so idealism. Actually, a lot of the founders of quantum physics were idealists who believed that the universe was more mental or consciousness than matter. Schrodinger was obsessed with Advaita Vedanta, which is Hindu mysticism. David Bohm became a disciple of Jiddu Krishnamurti, the spiritual teacher, and Bohm had a lot to say about consciousness and the relationship between physics and spirituality. Yeah, there are many fascinating quotes from the founders of quantum physics regarding consciousness and mind. Wolfgang Pauli, the Nobel laureate, he worked with Carl Jung, the depth psychologist. They were trying to develop some sort of theory which would link Jung's theory of the collective unconscious, psychological theory, with some sort of model of physics. So Pauli was very fascinated with the idea of a collective unconscious mind underlying the universe. So yeah, like, a lot of serious scientists have held to that sort of view. So going back to physicalism, um, it really depends on what somebody means when they say the universe is physical, but like every version that I've ran across has major holes in it. Um, there's also the issue that even if the word physical described reality accurately, which I don't really think it does, um, there's no reason why we should call the universe physical. That goes to Hume's is ought problem. That just because something is a certain way doesn't mean that we should do anything, take any specific action. Those are two different questions. And they have to be argued for with different arguments, basically. You can't just demonstrate that a thing is a certain way and a necessary action follows from that. So just because the universe is physical doesn't mean I have to call it physical. Like I don't like calling the universe physical. I don't feel like it describes reality as I experience it. I think for some people they feel like it does. Um, I think it has naive realist connotations in terms of perceptual theory, and naive realism has huge problems. Not the least of which being that um, evolutionary game theory has shown that it is almost, it is practically, um, there's almost no probability that we would have evolved for true perception of reality. Because evolution selects for fitness, not truth. It's called the fitness beats truth theorem, presented by Donald Hoffman. They ran a bunch of simulations using um, evolutionary game theory and showed that repeatedly, um, like that this perceptual strategy was preferred. So there's actual mathematical proof for that argument that that we don't see reality exactly as it is. And according to Hoffman and his interface theory of perception, we don't see reality as it is at all. And we already know that there's some sort of spectrum there. I mean, we see colors, and it's well established that colors do not exist outside of perception. Colors are an interpretation of data. Pretty much all qualia doesn't it can't be said to exist outside of perception. Um, but I think it goes deeper. I think that um, we're definitely headed towards more of an information theory of physics, like quantum information theory. I see things headed that direction. So the word information is, I think, going to be very big. And so that ties into this basic idea of perception that we're interpreting information or data and then constructing reality, basically. And this is not a fringe view among neuroscientists and cognitive scientists in terms of, like, it's well established that our brains construct a large portion of reality. Uh, Scientists just differ on how much they think our brains construct reality. Like how much of it is actually out there, how much of it is in our brains. The tough part is that we don't know. How can you know? Because we are limited by our brains or by our minds, by our perceptions. So how do you verify what reality is beyond perception? You really can't. Beyond human perception. Um, so yeah, it's very fascinating. It's also interesting too because technically there's something called mass energy equivalence, which means that technically like all matter could be said to be energy because matter can be converted to energy. Matter's defined by mass. So um, it appears that energy is more fundamental than matter because there's energy in empty space. That is, we've never measured anything that doesn't have energy. Nothing in the universe is void of energy. But a lot of the universe is void of matter. 99.99% or so of the universe is void of matter, technically, or particles or whatever. 99.99% empty space. And technically, quantum fields or quantum particles are considered to be perturbations of the quantum vacuum state. So basically, fluctuations in empty space. So everything goes back to empty space or emptiness, which is pretty wild. I'm a Buddhist, and that ties in directly with a doctrine known as shunyata in Buddhism, which is basically translated emptiness, and that's considered to be the highest sort of philosophical realization in Mahayana Buddhism, is the realization of emptiness, that everything is empty, that is devoid of any independent and permanent essence. So it's pretty wild that that emptiness is like the highest philosophical truth of Buddhism, Mahayana Buddhism, and it also turns out that physics is finding that everything goes back to emptiness. But they're not saying the same things. Emptiness itself isn't a theory about what's out there. It's more of a theory about what's out there. Well, I guess that's the same thing. But emptiness is not considered a thing in Buddhism. It's an attribute of things. That is, it's just saying what things are not, basically. So anyway, this is such a big topic, and I wanted to make this shorter, but it's almost impossible to. I guess my challenge for anybody who is a physicalist is, can you provide a criteria for what makes something physical? That is, something is physical if it meets this criteria. Like, does it have to be tangible? Does it have to be visible? Does it have to have mass? Does it have to take up space? Does it have to be described by physics? Does it have to be described by science? Something. Give us something so that we could test such a hypothesis, because it makes no testable predictions. There is no scientific theory called physicalism, or no theory showing that the universe is physical. It's a philosophical, speculative view that I think is just convention. Noam Chomsky, the linguist, he said that pretty much it's a label that we put on anything that is real, that we consider real. Whenever we find something new, we call it physical. So it doesn't add anything. It adds no new information. It's just like, Chomsky said that it's basically like saying, you should take this seriously when we say that something is physical. So it's like an emphasis, I think. I've even heard, or I've even seen it said or presented as physicalism as an attitude, which I think is more accurate. Like, I think a physicalist is somebody who has a certain approach to reality. Like, that's the way they prefer to think about reality. It's not the way I prefer to think about reality. And I don't see a good argument why I should consider the universe physical. Like, what does it mean for something to be physical? Unless I know that, I don't see the point. So yeah, that's my take on physicalism. I don't know if there's anything else that I'm missing, but I think that's basically it. So yeah, every Saturday I plan on releasing a video. This one was super long, but usually I want to cut it down to about half this length. So this is a special video, special extended cut. So yeah, alright, thank you for watching.